A glass shattered against marble. The sound cracked through Obsidian Noir like a gunshot, sharp and unforgiving, slicing straight through the low hum of jazz and whispered power. Conversations died mid-sentence. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Even the waitstaff, trained to move like shadows, stilled as crystal fragments skidded across the polished floor. Do-Hyun Kwon did not flinch. He sat in the private booth at table 7, legs crossed, one arm resting casually along the leather backrest, watching red wine bleed slowly across white linen like a controlled wound. The men around him tensed instantly, hands drifting beneath jackets, eyes scanning for threats. But he merely lifted 2 fingers. "Relax," he said softly, in Korean. His voice carried no urgency, no heat, only command. Across the room, Zaretha Kinjo stood frozen, her tray tilted in her hands, heart slamming so hard she could hear it in her ears. The shattered glass had come from table 7, from him, or, rather, from the flick of his wrist, careless and precise, as if breaking things in this place was as natural to him as breathing. The smell of expensive wine mixed with fear. "Did I say you could stop moving?" one of his men barked, eyes locked on her. Zaretha swallowed. 2 years. 2 years of learning how to disappear in this restaurant, how to keep her head down, her eyes lowered, her voice small. 2 years of surviving by becoming invisible. She forced her feet to move. As she stepped forward, heels whispering against marble, she felt the room watching her. Every instinct screamed at her to retreat, to call for a manager, to let someone else handle table 7. But Caleb's voice echoed in her memory, sharp and urgent. "Zaretha, table 7, now." She reached the edge of the booth. Do-Hyun finally looked up at her. His eyes were dark, unreadable, assessing her the way men like him assessed property, risk or meat. Slowly, deliberately, his gaze traveled from her face to the name tag pinned neatly to her uniform. Zaretha. The corner of his mouth lifted. Not a smile, but something close to amusement. "You took too long," he said in Korean. "Is that how service works where you come from?" A ripple of quiet laughter moved through his entourage. Zaretha's fingers tightened around the tray. "I apologize for the delay," she replied automatically, keeping her voice neutral, eyes lowered. "May I replace the wine for you, sir?" Do-Hyun leaned forward slightly, his cuff pulling back just enough for the edge of a phoenix tattoo to appear. Black ink against pale skin, wings curled in flame. "Sir?" he repeated. "You people always sound so polite when you're afraid." The laughter grew louder. Heat crawled up Zaretha's spine. She could feel it, the familiar burn of humiliation, of being reduced to something small and disposable. She'd heard variations of this before. Not always this blatant, not always this public, but always sharp enough to leave scars. One of the men at the table leaned closer, his breath sour with alcohol. "Hey," he said, switching to English with exaggerated slowness. "Do you even understand what he's saying?" Another chimed in. "Probably just nods and smiles. That's what they do, right?" The word they hung heavy in the air. Zaretha's jaw tightened. She set the tray down carefully, each movement deliberate, controlled. Her hands were steady now. Too steady. Do-Hyun watched her closely, interest sharpening in his eyes. "Tell me," he continued in Korean, his tone turning conversational, almost curious. "Do you know what kind of people eat here?" She didn't answer. He chuckled softly. "People who decide who lives comfortably and who disappears. People who don't like being stared at by servers who forget their place." Her eyes lifted before she could stop them. For a brief second, their gazes locked. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or annoyance. "You should be grateful," he said. "Places like this give people like you purpose. Without it, you'd be nothing." The room held its breath. Zaretha felt something inside her snap, not loudly, not violently, but cleanly, like a wire pulled too tight for too long. "Before we go any further, let me ask you something." Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments. I'm always amazed by how far these stories reach. And if stories like this pull you in, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what comes next. Now, let's continue. Zaretha straightened. When she spoke, it wasn't in English. It wasn't hesitant. It wasn't broken. It wasn't learned from television or textbooks. It was flawless. Dangsin ibjo simhe. Watch your mouth. The Busan accent wrapped around the words naturally, effortlessly, the way it did for people who had grown up hearing it every day of their lives. The effect was immediate. The laughter died. Smiles fell. One man's hand froze halfway to his glass. Do-Hyun's eyes widened, just slightly, but enough. For the first time since he'd walked into Obsidian Noir, the room did not belong to him. Zaretha continued before fear could reclaim her. "여긴 당신 소유 아니에요," she said evenly. "그리고 난 당신의 아무것도 아니에요. This place doesn't belong to you, and I am nothing of yours." Silence slammed down hard. Someone dropped a fork. It clattered against the floor, the sound absurdly loud. Do-Hyun stared at her now, really stared, as if seeing her for the first time. The accent, the syntax, the confidence. This wasn't mimicry. This wasn't defiance born of ignorance. This was someone who knew exactly what she was saying, and to whom. One of his men recovered first. "Boss?" "Shut up," Do-Hyun said quietly, without taking his eyes off her. He leaned back slowly, studying her like a puzzle that had just become interesting. "Say that again," he murmured in Korean. Slowly. Zaretha's heart hammered, but she didn't retreat. "I said," she repeated, her voice calm, "you don't own this place, and you don't own me." A muscle jumped in his jaw. "You have an accent," he said. "Busan, not Seoul, not learned." "I know," she replied. "Where did you learn it?" "I didn't learn it." The air between them tightened. One of the men shifted, uneasy. "This is getting weird." Do-Hyun lifted a hand again, silencing him. "You should be afraid right now," Do-Hyun said softly. "Do you understand that?" Zaretha met his gaze fully now. "I understand exactly who you are," she said. "And I understand that fear doesn't disappear just because someone powerful demands it." A slow smile spread across his face. Cold, fascinated. "You just broke the rule that keeps people like you alive," he said. "Then maybe," she replied, "it was a bad rule." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Do-Hyun reached into his jacket, pulled out a thick roll of bills, and placed it on the table. "Leave," he said, switching to English. "Before I decide this conversation needs a different ending." She didn't look at the money. "I'm scheduled until midnight," she said. His smile sharpened. "Not anymore." Zaretha turned and walked away. Every step felt unreal. Too loud, too exposed. She didn't see Do-Hyun's gaze follow her all the way to the staff corridor. She didn't hear him say under his breath, in Korean, "Find her." She only knew one thing as the door closed behind her. Tonight, invisibility had died, and something far more dangerous had noticed her. The cold air outside Obsidian Noir hit Zaretha like a slap. She sucked in a sharp breath as the heavy back door slammed shut behind her, cutting off the warm glow of the restaurant and the suffocating silence she'd left inside. Snow drifted lazily from the Vancouver sky, settling on the alley in soft white patches that did nothing to calm the storm raging in her chest. Her hands were shaking now. She pressed them against her thighs, forcing herself to breathe. In, out, slow, measured. The way her father had taught her when panic crept too close. "You never let them see you break," he used to say, his voice warm, carrying that unmistakable Busan lilt. "You break later, in private." She let out a shaky laugh. Too late for that. The image replayed in her mind like a cruel loop. Do-Hyun's eyes widening, the room freezing, the moment she'd spoken without thinking, without hiding. For the first time in years, she hadn't swallowed the words burning her tongue. She had no idea what came next. Her phone buzzed violently in her pocket. She flinched, then cursed herself and pulled it out. A message from Caleb. What the hell was that? Are you trying to get us all killed? She stared at the screen, jaw tightening. Another message came in before she could respond. You're done for the night. Don't come back. Confirm you got this. Zaretha typed back slowly. Got it. She slipped the phone back into her pocket and leaned against the brick wall, eyes closed. Her legs felt weak, like they might give out if she tried to move. She told herself it was over, that rich men insulted servers every night, that even powerful men moved on, that the world was full of moments that felt catastrophic but weren't. But deep down, she knew better. Men like Do-Hyun Kwon didn't forget. High above the city, inside a glass-walled penthouse overlooking Cole Harbor, Do-Hyun stood perfectly still, staring out at the dark water below. The lights of Vancouver glittered like 1,000 tiny lies, beautiful and meaningless. Min-jae stood a few steps behind him, tablet tucked under his arm, posture rigid. You want me to handle it? Min-jae asked carefully. She crossed a line, publicly. Do-Hyun didn't turn around. She spoke Busan, he said. Min-jae blinked. Yes, sir. Not Seoul, not textbook. His fingers curled slowly against the glass. Busan. Silence stretched. That accent isn't learned, Do-Hyun continued. It's lived. You hear it in the way she clipped her consonants, in how she didn't hesitate. Min-jae hesitated. You think she's connected? I think, Do-Hyun said, finally turning, that she is a question. He walked back toward the bar, poured himself a drink he didn't want, and stared at the amber liquid as if answers might rise to the surface. Run her, he said. Min-jae nodded. Already started. Name's Zaretha Kinjo, 28, East African origin, Canadian resident. No criminal history, works 2 jobs, no social media worth noting. Family, father deceased, mother deceased, no siblings listed. Do-Hyun looked up sharply. How deceased? Father died 15 years ago. Cancer, mother died shortly after. Car, accident. Do-Hyun's jaw tightened. And before that? Min-jae frowned, fingers tapping across the screen. That's where it gets strange. How strange? No records before age 13. Immigration data appears amended. Cleaned. Do-Hyun's lips curved faintly. Find out who cleaned it. Yes, sir. And Min-jae? Yes? Bring her in, Do-Hyun said calmly. Alive, unharmed. Min-jae hesitated. You want to speak with her? I want to understand her, Do-Hyun replied. People don't speak like that by accident. Back in her apartment, Zaretha sat on the edge of her bed, still in her uniform, staring at nothing. The silence was loud. She replayed every word, every look, every breath from the restaurant. She told herself she should have stayed quiet, that she'd broken the rule her father had drilled into her bones. Survive first. Speak later. Her chest tightened. She stood abruptly and crossed the small room, opening the drawer where she kept the few things she couldn't bring herself to throw away. At the bottom lay an old, creased photograph. Her father stood in the center, tall and broad-shouldered, his dark skin stark against the pale faces around him. His hair was cropped short, his expression serious but not unkind. He wore a suit that didn't quite fit, like it belonged to a different life. On the back, in neat Korean script, he had written, Sala, Nune Dieji Malgo. Live, don't be seen. Her throat burned. I failed you, she whispered. A sharp knock echoed through the apartment. Zaretha froze. Another knock followed, louder, more deliberate. Zaretha Kinjo, a man's voice called from the other side of the door. Calm, controlled. We need to speak with you. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She glanced around the room, mind racing. No back exit, no place to hide. The windows were too high, the snow too thick. She swallowed hard and approached the door. "Who is it?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "Friends," the voice replied. "Of Do-Hyun Kwon." Her stomach dropped. She closed her eyes for a brief second, then opened the door. Two men stood in the hallway. Both well-dressed, both calm, both dangerous in the way men were when they didn't need to raise their voices. "Please," one of them said politely, gesturing toward the elevator. "You're coming with us." Zaretha straightened. "Am I being arrested?" she asked. The man smiled faintly. "No. Am I being kidnapped?" Another pause. "Think of it," he said, "as an invitation." She considered screaming, running, fighting. Then she thought of Do-Hyun's smile, of the way his eyes had lit with curiosity, not anger. She grabbed her coat. The penthouse was colder than she expected, not in temperature but in feeling. Everything was glass and steel and sharp angles, the kind of space designed to impress and intimidate in equal measure. Do-Hyun stood by the window when she entered, hands clasped behind his back. "You're punctual," he said without turning. "I didn't have much choice," Zaretha replied. He turned slowly, studying her again. She noticed details she hadn't before, the faint scar near his temple, the exhaustion hidden beneath his composure. "You could have run," he said. "I'm tired of running," she replied. Something flickered in his eyes. "Sit," he said, gesturing toward a chair. She didn't. "I want answers," she said. "Then I'm leaving." A smile tugged at his lips. Bold. "You insulted me," she said, "publicly. Why bring me here?" "Because," he said, stepping closer, "you spoke to me like you weren't afraid." "I was afraid." "But you spoke anyway." "Yes. Why?" Zaretha met his gaze. "Because my father taught me that silence doesn't always save you. Sometimes it just buries you." Do-Hyun's expression hardened. "Your father," he said, "he taught you Korean. He raised me in it." "In Busan." Her breath caught. "Yes," she said slowly. Do-Hyun's jaw tightened. "And his name?" he asked. She hesitated. "Isaac," she said. "Isaac Kinjo." The glass in Do-Hyun's hand cracked, not shattered. Just a thin fracture spidering out beneath his fingers. "Interesting," he said quietly. Zaretha felt the room shift. "What?" she asked. He set the glass down carefully. "This cage," he said, gesturing around them, "keeps you alive." She laughed bitterly. "From you?" "From others like me," he corrected. She crossed her arms. "I don't want your protection." "You already have it," he replied. Their eyes locked. Neither of them noticed the city lights flickering below. Neither of them yet understood the full weight of the name she had just spoken. And somewhere in the depths of Do-Hyun Kwon's memory, a ghost stirred. One he had buried long ago, but never forgotten. Zaretha didn't sit. She remained standing in the center of the penthouse, coat still on, boots damp from melting snow, shoulders squared like armor she'd worn too long to remove. Do-Hyun watched her in silence. Most people filled silence with noise. Explanations, apologies, fear. Zaretha did none of those things. She simply waited, eyes steady, as if daring the room itself to move first. "You're not afraid enough," Do-Hyun finally said. "I'm afraid," she replied. "I'm just not confused." That earned another flicker of interest. He gestured again toward the chair. "You can stand if you want. It won't change anything." "It changes something," she said. "It reminds me I still choose where my body goes." The corner of his mouth lifted faintly. "You chose to come here." "Yes," she said, "because I wanted to look you in the eye when you decided what to do with me." Do-Hyun exhaled slowly and moved toward the bar, pouring another drink. He didn't offer her one. "You know who I am," he said. "I know what people whisper," she replied. "And I know what kind of men eat at table 7. Yet you spoke to me like an equal." I spoke to you like a human being, she corrected. You're the one who mistook that for equality. That made him laugh. Not loud, not warm, but real. You're dangerous, he said. So are you, she replied. The difference is, I don't pretend I'm not. He turned to face her again. Why Busan? She blinked. What? You could have answered me in English, he said. You could have stayed safe, but you chose Busan Korean. Why? Zaretha hesitated, then answered honestly. Because you were trying to humiliate me in a language you thought I didn't own, and because I was tired of letting people decide who I was allowed to be. Silence stretched. Do-Hyun studied her like he was mapping a battlefield. You said your father raised you in Busan, he said. What did he do there? She stiffened. He lived, she said. He worked. He survived. That's vague. Because it's private. His gaze sharpened. Privacy is a luxury. So is cruelty, she shot back. For a moment, the tension coiled so tightly it felt like the air itself might snap. Then Do-Hyun stepped back. You're not leaving tonight, he said calmly. Zaretha's heart sank, but she didn't show it. You said you wanted answers, he continued. So do I. You'll stay until we're done asking questions. That's not an answer, she said. That's a threat. It's a boundary, he replied. One you crossed first. She laughed softly. You insulted me first. And you humiliated me in my own language, he said. Publicly? You deserved it. The smile vanished. That, he said quietly, is where you're wrong. The door behind her opened. Min-jae entered, his expression carefully neutral, eyes flicking briefly to Zaretha before returning to Do-Hyun. Sir, Min-jae said, I have preliminary results. Speak. Min-jae cleared his throat. Zaretha Kinjo does not exist. Zaretha's breath caught. That's not true. It is in official records, Min-jae replied. But there are anomalies. Explain, Do-Hyun said. There is a man matching his description who operated under several names, Min-jae continued. Black, Korean-speaking, former enforcer tied to Busan syndicates 15 to 20 years ago. Known aliases include Isaac Park and Isaac Kwon Park. The room went very still. Zaretha turned sharply toward Do-Hyun. What does that mean? Do-Hyun didn't answer immediately. His face had gone pale, not with fear, but with something far heavier. That's impossible, he murmured. Min-jae swallowed. Sir, this man was believed to be dead. Killed during an internal conflict. Zaretha's voice shook. My father died of cancer. Do-Hyun's eyes snapped to hers. Did he? He asked. Anger flared. I watched him die. Where? He demanded. In a hospice, she said. I was 14. I held his hand. Do-Hyun's jaw clenched. Min-jae, he said quietly. Leave us. Min-jae hesitated, then nodded and exited. Zaretha felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. You think my father lied to me, she said. I think, Do-Hyun replied slowly, that your father was one of the most dangerous men my family ever crossed. Her chest tightened painfully. Then you're wrong. Am I? His eyes seemed to ask. He turned away, pacing toward the window, fists clenched at his sides. My brother died because of a man named Isaac, he said. A traitor who stole from us, who exposed roots, who destabilized everything. Zaretha shook her head. My father was not a criminal. He was a killer, Do-Hyun snapped, turning back. And he was black. And he spoke Busan like he was born there. Does that not sound familiar? Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. He taught me to read in Korean, she said. He cooked me seaweed soup on my birthdays. He held me when I had nightmares. That's who he was. Do-Hyun's voice softened despite himself. People can be more than one thing. Not to you, she shot back. To you, people are assets or threats. He flinched. You don't know me, he said. I know enough, she replied. You hide behind power because you don't know who you'd be without it. His eyes darkened. And you hide behind morality, he said, because you don't want to face the blood in your past. The words hit her like a slap. You don't get to rewrite my father, she said. You don't get to turn him into your villain. And you don't get to pretend he was innocent, he replied. Not if his choices killed my brother. Her breath came shallow now. What was your brother's name? She asked quietly. Do-Hyun hesitated. Jin-woo. Something twisted in her chest. My father cried the night Jin-woo died, she said. Do-Hyun stared at her. He came home covered in blood, she continued, voice trembling. He locked himself in the bathroom and cried. I'd never seen him cry before. He kept saying, it wasn't supposed to be like this. The room seemed to tilt. Why would he cry? Do-Hyun whispered. If he killed my brother? Zaretha shook her head. He never said he killed anyone. He said someone he tried to save didn't make it. Do-Hyun's pulse roared in his ears. Memory surged unbidden. Jin-woo's body on cold concrete. Bullet wounds too precise, too controlled. The chaos afterward. The lies his father had fed him. No, he said, more to himself than to her. That's not how the story goes. Then maybe, Zaretha said softly, you were told the wrong story. Silence fell again, heavier now. Do-Hyun sank into the chair he'd offered her earlier, suddenly looking older, wearier. You should hate me, he said quietly. After tonight. I don't hate you, she replied. I hate what you represent. He looked up at her. And what's that? A world where men like you decide who deserves dignity. Their eyes locked. Something dangerous and fragile pulsed between them. You're staying, he said again, but this time there was less command in his voice. Not because you're a prisoner, because if you leave now, someone else will find you. And if I stay, she asked. Then I can protect you, he said, until we understand what your father really did. And if I don't like the truth, she asked. Neither will I, he replied. Zaretha slowly removed her coat. She sat, not because he told her to, but because, for the first time that night, running felt more dangerous than staying. Outside, the city lights burned on, unaware that two lives, bound by a buried past, were colliding with consequences neither of them was ready to face. And deep within Do-Hyun Kwon, a question he had never allowed himself to ask began to surface. What if the man he hated had been trying to save them all? Morning light crept slowly across the penthouse, pale and reluctant, slipping through the glass walls like an intruder that hadn't been invited. Vancouver looked harmless in daylight. Water calm, streets orderly, people small and distant. But inside, the air was thick with unresolved tension. Zaretha woke on the couch, her body stiff, her mind already racing before her eyes fully opened. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then memory rushed in all at once. The restaurant, the accent, the penthouse, her father's name hanging in the air like a live wire. She sat up abruptly. The room was quiet, too quiet. Her pulse quickened as she scanned the space. The bar was untouched. The chairs were empty. Do-Hyun was nowhere in sight. She swung her legs over the edge of the couch and stood, bare feet cold against the polished floor. Her coat lay folded neatly on the armrest. Someone had placed a glass of water and a folded blanket nearby. She didn't remember asking for either. Good, a voice said behind her. You're awake. She turned sharply. Do-Hyun stood near the kitchen island, sleeves rolled up, dark hair slightly disheveled, a mug in his hand. He looked different, less armored, still dangerous but stripped of the theatrical dominance he'd worn the night before. You watch people sleep? She asked. I watch people who might run, he replied calmly. You didn't. Because I didn't think I'd get far. That's honest. She crossed her arms. So what happens now? He took a sip of his drink, eyes never leaving her. Now we verify the truth. And if your truth and mine don't match, then one of us has been lied to. Her jaw tightened. You keep talking about my father like he was a weapon. He was, Do-Hyun said. And he knew how to use himself. That doesn't make him a monster. No, Do-Hyun agreed quietly. It makes him valuable. She hated how calmly he said it. You said he stole from your family, she said, that he betrayed you. I said that's what I was told. She studied his face. There was no triumph there, no certainty, only something that looked dangerously close to doubt. Who told you? She asked. Do-Hyun didn't answer right away. My father, he said finally, and the men who survived. Survived what? A collapse, he said. A violent one. Routes exposed, allies arrested, blood spilled. And you never questioned it? She pressed. I was 20, he replied sharply. My brother was dead. My mother stopped speaking. My father built walls instead of answers. The bitterness in his voice surprised her. You inherited an empire built on silence, she said softly. And you inherited a lie wrapped in kindness, he shot back. They stared at each other, neither willing to yield. A knock sounded at the door. Min-jae entered moments later, expression grave. We found the storage unit, he said. Zaretha's breath caught. What storage unit? Min-jae glanced at Do-Hyun, then back to her. Registered under one of your father's aliases. It's still sealed. Do-Hyun set his mug down slowly. Take us. The drive was quiet. Snow lined the streets as they moved through Burnaby, the city giving way to industrial stretches and long rows of anonymous metal doors. Zaretha sat in the back seat, hands clenched in her lap, staring out the window as if the answers she feared might be waiting just beyond the glass. When the car stopped, her heart began to pound. The storage facility was old, utilitarian, the kind of place no one noticed and everyone forgot. The smell of dust and cold metal filled the air as they walked down a narrow corridor. Unit 317. Min-jae unlocked it. The door rolled up with a hollow metallic groan. Inside were boxes, files, a small locked safe, and on top of one crate, an envelope. Zaretha recognized her name instantly. Her knees nearly gave out. That's mine, she whispered. Do-Hyun looked at her sharply. You've never been here? She shook her head. I didn't even know it existed. Min-jae stepped back as Do-Hyun reached for the envelope. He hesitated only a second before handing it to her. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was a letter. Her father's handwriting. Zaretha, if you are reading this, it means I failed to keep the past from finding you. Tears blurred her vision. I need you to understand something before you hear lies dressed as truth. I did not become who I was because I wanted power. I became it because power was the only language monsters understood. Do-Hyun's breath caught. Zaretha continued reading aloud, her voice breaking. The Kwon family built their empire on more than fear. They built it on silence, on women who disappeared, on children sold as cargo. I tried to stop it from the inside. When I couldn't, I stole what I needed and burned what I could. Do-Hyun staggered back a step. That's not possible, he whispered. Zaretha wiped her eyes and kept going. Your name is why I ran, because if they knew about you, you would be leverage. Or worse. The money I took wasn't greed. It was protection. For witnesses, for bribes, for escape routes. I killed one man. One. And I did it to save a girl who reminded me of you. Do-Hyun's face drained of color. My brother, he whispered. Jinwoo. Zaretha looked up at him. Your brother was trafficking. The words fell like gunshots. No, Do-Hyun said hoarsely. He wasn't. There are recordings, Min-jae said quietly, opening one of the boxes. Ledgers, names, locations. He handed one to Do-Hyun. Do-Hyun flipped through the pages, his hands shaking now. He saw numbers, routes, ages. His stomach twisted violently. Why would my father lie? He asked, voice cracking. Because truth destroys thrones, Zaretha said softly. Do-Hyun dropped the ledger. He turned away, pressing a hand to his mouth as if he might be sick. My entire life, he said, voice breaking, was built on this. Zaretha stepped closer. You still have a choice. He laughed bitterly. A choice? Everything I am is not everything you were told, she finished. You asked why my father cried. Now you know. Do-Hyun slid down against the wall, head in his hands. For the first time, he didn't look like a king. He looked like a son who had just learned his hero was a lie. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Min-jae's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, face hardening. Sir, we have a problem. What now? Do-Hyun muttered. Obsidian Noir, Min-jae said. It's on fire. Zaretha's heart dropped. What? 5 staff members were inside, Min-jae continued grimly. The Consortium just claimed responsibility. The air went cold. They're declaring war, Min-jae said. Do-Hyun stood slowly. His grief vanished, replaced by something sharper, clearer. They're trying to erase witnesses, Zaretha said, and send a message. Yes, Do-Hyun replied. To me. And to me, she said. He turned to her. This ends now, he said quietly. No more hiding, no more cages. Zaretha met his gaze. Then we do this right. He nodded once. Justice, he said. Not revenge, she replied. For the first time, they stood on the same side. Not bound by fear or obsession, but by truth. And somewhere in the burning ruins of Obsidian Noir, the old world was collapsing, making room for something neither of them yet understood, but had already chosen. Smoke still clung to Zaretha's clothes hours later. Even after they left the storage unit, even after the drive back into the city, even after she scrubbed her hands raw in the penthouse bathroom, she could still smell it. Burned wood, melted fabric, something darker beneath it all. Death left a scent. Her father had once told her that. She hadn't believed him then. Now she did. She stood at the sink, staring at her reflection. Her eyes looked older, sharper, like something inside her had been forced awake and refused to go back to sleep. Behind her, Do-Hyun leaned against the doorway, silent. He hadn't spoken since Min-jae confirmed the names of the dead. 5 people. 1 dishwasher who always hummed while he worked. A hostess who sent money home every month. A line cook who just gotten engaged. Collateral. Zaretha's hands curled into fists. They didn't deserve this, she said quietly. No, Do-Hyun replied. His voice was hoarse. They didn't. She turned to face him. They burned it because of me. They burned it because of me, he corrected. You were just the excuse. That doesn't make it better. No, he agreed. It makes it clearer. She studied him. He looked stripped down now. No smugness, no theatrical calm. Just a man standing amid the wreckage of his inheritance. What are you going to do? She asked. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked past her and poured himself a drink. His hand shook as he lifted the glass. I spent my life believing power meant control, he said slowly. Control of fear, of outcomes, of people. He took a sip, then grimaced and set the glass aside untouched. And now, she asked. Now I see what control costs, he said. And I don't want to pay it anymore. Her chest tightened. Words are easy. Yes, he said, which is why I'm done with words. Min-jae entered quietly, closing the door behind him. His expression was grim, but resolved. The Consortium is escalating, he said. They're leaking selective information, framing Obsidian Noir as a trafficking hub. Zaretha let out a bitter laugh. The irony. They're trying to get ahead of the truth, Min-jae continued. If authorities move first, they can spin it as a cleanup. Do-Hyun nodded. Which means we move faster. Zaretha turned sharply. We? Do-Hyun met her gaze. You said justice, not revenge. Yes. This is how we get it, he said. "We expose everything, all of it." Min-jae stiffened. "Sir, I know," Do-Hyun cut in. "It means burning my own house down." Silence fell. "You'd be dismantling your entire operation," Zaretha said. "Yes. And your allies? We'll become enemies. And your family." A shadow crossed his face. Already lost. Zaretha searched his eyes, looking for hesitation. She found none. "What do you need?" "From me?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. "I need your father's truth," he said finally. "And I need you to be seen." Her stomach dropped. "Seen how?" "As a witness," he said. "As proof that this didn't start or end with me." Fear rippled through her. "They'll come after me." "They already are," he replied gently. "The difference is, this time you won't be alone." She looked away, jaw tightening. "My father spent his life keeping me invisible. And it killed him," Do-Hyun said quietly. "Eventually." The words hurt, because they were true. Min-jae cleared his throat. "Federal contacts are willing to listen, but they won't move without credibility." Zaretha turned back. "You want me to testify?" "Yes," Do-Hyun said. She laughed, sharp and humorless. "I was a waitress yesterday." "And today you're the reason empires fall," he replied. She stared at him. "You really think they'll let us live after this?" "No," he said honestly. "I think they'll try very hard to make sure we don't." Her pulse thundered in her ears. "Then why do it?" she demanded. "Because," he said, stepping closer. "If I don't, the blood on my hands never washes off." Their faces were inches apart now. "And what about me?" she whispered. "What happens when I step into the light and realize I can't go back?" He held her gaze. "Then I'll stand there with you." Something in his voice, steady, unflinching, made her chest ache. "Say we do this," she said. "Say we leak everything. What's the plan?" Do-Hyun exhaled slowly. "We start with the Re-Consortium. They think they're untouchable. They've grown careless." Min-jae nodded. "They're moving product through the shipyards. One location, one hub." Zaretha's eyes sharpened. "I've seen that place." Both men looked at her. "I walked past it on my way home from my second job," she said. "I hear the trucks at night. I always thought it was construction." Do-Hyun's jaw tightened. "It's not." "They use language," she said suddenly. "Codes, Korean, but not formal, regional." Do-Hyun looked at her intently. "Busan?" She nodded. "And Gyeongsang dialect, the kind people use when they think no one else understands." Min-jae's brows furrowed. "You could get close." "I already have," she replied quietly. "They don't see me." Do-Hyun felt something twist in his chest. "I won't put you back in that position." "You don't get to decide that," she said firmly. "This ends because people like me stop being invisible." Silence stretched. Then Do-Hyun nodded once. "All right." He turned to Min-jae. "Prepare the evidence. Everything from the storage unit, every ledger, every recording." "And the authorities?" Min-jae asked. "I'll handle them," Do-Hyun said. "I still have leverage." Zaretha swallowed. "And the shipyard?" Do-Hyun looked at her. "That's where it ends." Night fell again. From the penthouse, they watched the city lights flicker on, one by one, unaware of the reckoning moving beneath them. Zaretha stood at the window, arms wrapped around herself, mind racing. "Are you scared?" Do-Hyun asked quietly. "Yes," she replied without hesitation. "Good," he said. "So am I." She glanced at him. "You don't look like it." "I was taught never to," he said. "Doesn't mean I'm not." She hesitated, then spoke. "If this goes wrong," he turned to her fully, "then at least it goes wrong for the right reason." Her throat tightened. "You know," she said softly. "My father used to tell me justice wasn't clean, that it cost people more than they expected." Do-Hyun nodded. He was right. They stood there together, two people forged by lies, choosing truth anyway. Somewhere in the city, engines roared to life at the shipyard. Orders were, given. Doors were locked. Men laughed, unaware they were being watched. And for the first time since Obsidian Noir burned, Zaretha felt something stronger than fear take hold. Resolve. The cycle that had claimed her father, that had twisted Do-Hyun into something he never chose, was about to be challenged. And this time, it would be challenged out loud. The shipyard smelled like oil, rust, and the sea. An unholy mix that clung to the back of the throat. Floodlights cut harsh white cones through the night, illuminating stacks of shipping containers and slow-moving figures who thought darkness made them invisible. Zaretha pulled the hood of her coat lower as she walked, head down, posture loose, the way men had taught her not to notice, the way the world had trained her to move. Invisible. Do-Hyun watched from the shadow of a warehouse, jaw clenched so tightly his teeth ached. Every instinct screamed at him to stop this, to pull her back, to put steel and distance between her and danger. But this was her choice. And for the first time in his life, he was learning to respect one. Min Jae's voice murmured through the earpiece. 2 trucks arrived 5 minutes ago. No plates, men speaking Busan dialect. You were right. Zaretha passed close enough to hear them now. The laughter, the casual cruelty. Balri omjigyo, one of them said. Move faster. Another voice snorted. Geog jung ma, amudo anbwa. Don't worry, no one's watching. Her stomach turned. She slowed, pretending to fumble with her bag, letting herself drift closer. Her pulse hammered in her ears, but her face remained blank. One man glanced at her, eyes sliding over her without interest. Yeah, he muttered to his friend in Korean. 그 여자 봤어? You see that woman? 아니, the other replied. 그냥 또 하나의 그림자야. Just another shadow. Zaretha swallowed. She lifted her phone slightly, screen dark, recording audio. Every word mattered. Every syllable. Ibionen Edelia, a voice said. Dongnamaizo. This time it's kids. From Southeast Asia. Another laughed. Doni Jal Day. Easy money. Zaretha's vision blurred with rage. Behind the warehouse, Do-Hyun's fists curled slowly at his sides. Sir, Min Jae said urgently, we have enough. Not yet, Do-Hyun replied. His voice was tight. Let her finish. Zaretha turned away, heart pounding, and walked back the way she came, steps measured, controlled. She didn't breathe fully until she rounded the corner and slipped into the darkness where Do-Hyun waited. She looked up at him, eyes burning. They know, she whispered, and they don't care. His jaw clenched. They will! Min Jae's voice cut in sharply. Movement inside the warehouse. They're loading. That's our window, Do-Hyun said. Sirens wailed in the distance. Not close yet, but coming. Zaretha's phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. Run. Her blood ran cold. They know I was listening, she said. Before Do-Hyun could respond, a shout rang out. Gyeogi SEO. Stop! Gunfire exploded. Zaretha ducked instinctively as bullets tore into metal, sparks flying. Do-Hyun grabbed her arm, yanking her behind a container as chaos erupted around them. Men scattered. Orders were screamed. Engines roared. Min Jae's voice was a shout now. Federal units inbound. 5 minutes. Too long, Do-Hyun muttered. Another shot rang out, closer this time. Zaretha pressed herself against the cold steel, heart slamming so hard she thought it might burst. Are you hurt? Do-Hyun asked urgently. She shook her head. No. He cupped her face briefly, forcing her to look at him. Stay with Min Jae if this goes bad. And you? She demanded. I finish this, he said. She grabbed his wrist. No more martyrdom. A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. Then don't let me die. He moved before she could answer, stepping out into the open. Guman, he shouted in Korean. Meom Kweo. The men froze when they saw him. Recognition rippled through them. Fear. Do-Hyun, one whispered. Do-Hyun. Do-Hyun stepped forward, hands visible. "This ends tonight." One man laughed nervously. "Hyungnim, Ohea." "Hyung, it's a misunderstanding. There are recordings," Do-Hyun said coldly. "Ledgers, names, federal agents are on their way." The laughter died. "You sold children," Do-Hyun continued. "In my family's name." A man raised his gun. Zaretha screamed, "No!" The shot rang out, but not from them. Floodlights flared brighter. Sirens screamed closer. Armed federal agents poured into the shipyard from every direction. "Drop your weapons!" Men scattered in panic. Some ran, some fell. One dropped to his knees, sobbing. Zaretha stumbled forward, breath ragged, as agents swarmed past her. Do-Hyun stood perfectly still, eyes locked on the man who'd raised the gun. "It didn't have to be this way," Do-Hyun said quietly. The man spat on the ground. "Nigga jogdo dogada. Your family is the same." Do-Hyun didn't deny it. Agents cuffed the men, hauling them away. Crates were opened. Evidence catalogued. Children, alive, shaken, were carried out into blankets and light. Zaretha sank to her knees when she saw them. They're alive. Do-Hyun knelt beside her, placing a steadying hand on her back. "You did this," he said. "We did," she corrected. Flashlights swung toward them. An agent approached, eyes sharp. "Zaretha Kinjo?" he asked. She stood slowly. "Yes." "We need your statement," he said. "And yours," he added, turning to Do-Hyun. Do-Hyun nodded. "You'll have everything." Hours later, as dawn crept pale and exhausted across the horizon, Zaretha sat wrapped in a blanket, staring at the sea. Her hands were still trembling. Do-Hyun stood beside her, silent. "Once this goes public," she said quietly, "there's no going back." "I know," he replied. She looked up at him. "Do you regret it?" He didn't hesitate. "No." She nodded slowly. "Neither do I." In the distance, the first news helicopters circled. The truth was finally visible, and it was loud. The sun rose over Vancouver like it had no knowledge of the chaos that had unfolded in the night. From the penthouse, Zaretha and Do-Hyun watched the city stretch and yawn below them, streets gleaming wet, fog curling lazily over rooftops. For a moment, everything felt fragile, almost peaceful. Zaretha wrapped her arms around herself, shivering, not from cold, but from exhaustion and relief. She had survived, and more importantly, she had acted. Children were safe. Traffickers were in custody. The empire of fear that had once ruled both her life and Do-Hyun's was crumbling. Do-Hyun stood beside her, quiet. The tension in his shoulders had eased, but his eyes were still sharp, scanning the horizon. "You did well," he said, his voice low. "We did," Zaretha corrected, glancing up at him. She could feel the weight of the night pressing down, yet in that weight there was a strange lightness, the burden of fear finally shared, no longer hers alone. A helicopter passed in the distance, news crews already catching the fallout from the Re-Consortium's collapse. The city would talk about this for weeks. Her story, their story, would be the center of it all. Do-Hyun finally spoke again. "Now what?" Zaretha exhaled. "Now, we live. We make sure it doesn't happen again, and we don't let fear decide for us." He nodded slowly, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You've changed me," he admitted. "And you," she said softly, "remind me that courage isn't about hiding. It's about standing, even when the world wants you invisible." For a long moment, they just stood together, the city stretching endlessly before them. They had won battles, saved lives, uncovered truths, but neither could forget the blood spilled, the secrets unearthed, the families torn apart. The cycle had been broken for now, but the world remained full of shadows. Zaretha turned to leave, but paused at the doorway. "Do you think it's over?" she asked, voice low. Do-Hyun's eyes darkened, and he gave a slow shake of his head. Over? Nothing is ever over. That lingering truth hung in the air between them, a silent promise and a subtle threat. They had survived, yes, but the world outside the penthouse would continue to test them, challenge them, and force them to choose again. And next time, the stakes could be higher. Zaretha glanced back at him one last time, a spark of defiance and hope in her eyes. "Then we face it together," she said. Do-Hyun nodded. Together. The camera of fate would keep rolling. Shadows would shift. And somewhere, someone else was already watching, plotting, waiting for the right moment to strike. The Rasaun story wasn't over. It had only just begun. Thank you so much for sticking with this story until the very end. If it moved you in any way, even just a little, make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment telling me your favorite moment. I read every single one, and they truly mean the world to me. I'd also love to know where you're watching from, so drop your city in the comments. It's amazing to see how far these stories travel. Until next time, stay safe, stay blessed, and never forget, sometimes survival is just the beginning.